let me ask you about Epstein. This guy Epstein, it doesn't say the name doesn't want to go away because the left thinks they have some leverage on your dad. You and I both know for 4 years they could have released everything because Biden had the White House, he had the DOJ, he at one point had at least one house. He had the Senate. He didn't have the House of Representatives. They could have released anything they wanted to release. Clearly, they didn't want to. Now they're pretending your dad is hiding something. Eric, you know better than anybody. I grew up in Palm Beach County, Florida. I'm from New York originally. I grew up in Palm Beach County. Mar-a-Lago was always a staple of the area. And when you heard about somebody being a member at Mar-a-Lago, that was a really big deal. We also knew a long time ago that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago for mistreating women. I mean, this is not a guy that your dad had as best man at his wedding. This is a guy that was shunned from Mar-a-Lago, a club that was the first club in town to admit Jews to the club and black people to the club and protected women all the time. Why are they trying to pretend like he somehow was his co-pilot going to this island? I don't understand why they won't drop this.
Because they have nothing else. I mean, this never came up once during Joe Biden. Isn't that really interesting?
Not once.
That over the 4 years, not once did this come up. Now Epstein killed himself during that period of time. You had all the controversy, and not once did it come up. It wasn't until my father was deeply in office that all of a sudden my father's name started coming up. And isn't that kind of interesting when Maxwell testifies the fact that my father was never around? David Schoen, who was literally his attorney, meaning who was Epstein's attorney,
right,
said that he spoke to Epstein and asked him, was Donald Trump ever in the picture? And you know what? David Schoen came out and, I mean, he wrote a tweet about this, a couple of days ago, but he said that Epstein said that Donald Trump was never part of that inner circle of his. And he asked him specifically, this is Epstein's personal attorney, the guy who was defending him. And then isn't it really interesting that, I mean, my father threw him out of Mar-a-Lago like a dog, like a dog. He thought he was a creep. I remember these stories from when I was younger. Yet the media won't give it up because you know what, Joe? It's no different than the Russia hoax, right? I mean, or the dirty dossier. Look at the dirty dossier. You had Hillary Clinton pay for a dirty dossier that said my father was going after prostitutes and golden showers and all the most unthinkable things you could ever. Yeah. It was all made up. It was all fabricated. And why did they fabricate it? Because they wanted to defame my father. They wanted to defame who he was, his legacy. They wanted to embarrass him. They wanted to affect his relationship. They wanted to affect his marriage. They probably wanted to affect, his kids. They made this whole thing up. It was paid for by the Hillary camp. It was paid for the dirty dossier, and no one's been held accountable for it. Is that not the exact same thing that they're doing here?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, look at the Russia narrative. They knew that was BS. I got stories. Eric, I hear you've got secret servers communicating with the Kremlin in the basement of Trump Tower. It was untrue. I literally said to the FBI, come over to Trump Tower. Come to Trump Tower. Find the secret servers. Have at it. You've got carte blanche to go through our building. We hardly know what, the Iowa caucuses are, let alone, colluding with Russia. Give me a freaking break. Come over. They let that narrative go for a 3-year period of time until Robert Mueller had to come out and say there was no collusion with Russia ever. And by the way, guess who made up that whole narrative? Hillary Clinton, right? I mean, how many more of these wild goose chases do they have to? And isn't that really amazing? You mean to tell me if there was something that was there, they wouldn't, under Joe Biden, have brought it out, and yet all the Democrats are going after my father, release the files. Where was Joe Biden? Where was Joe Biden in this
Eric,
whole thing?
I feel like your dad is playing 3D chess or 4D chess, and here's what I mean. Schoen said nothing. Dershowitz said nothing there. Virginia Giuffre, the woman who's now dead, said anytime she saw Donald Trump, he was nothing but cordial, nice, and professional. And Maxwell says there was nothing there. And let's add the cherry on top. And maybe I'm just stupid, but if somebody says Donald Trump is dangerous, and somebody who says that in an email is a disgusting pedophile, I'm glad he thinks Donald Trump is dangerous. It would be like Hitler saying the Allies are dangerous. Well, good. I'm glad you think they're dangerous. So I don't think there's anything there. Hey, Eric, what am I missing?
Dangerous to him. And by the way,
right.
You don't exactly kick somebody out of your private club, the most exclusive club in Florida, and totally humiliate them and embarrass them if you want to go diddle around their house, right?
Exactly right.
It's not exactly what you do. If you're such good friends, I haven't kicked any of my friends out of Mar-a-Lago, right? My father kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago because he thought he was a freaking creeper, which the guy clearly was. And
yes,
by the way, then I get to see a picture. They'll put a picture up of my father and Epstein and by the way, I think I'm in every single one of the pictures where he's got his kids next to him because I was always around my father, right? I mean, This isn't exactly scandalous. By the way, they're not going after Bill Clinton, who was on his island time and time and time again. No one's calling him up saying, "Why were you on the island over and over and over?" No one's calling up any of these other creeps that went to his island 1,000 times. But yet, Donald Trump, the guy who kicks him out, and the only pictures that exist with Epstein happen to have either myself or Ivanka in them. I mean, give me a break. And by the way, anybody who knows Palm Beach, Florida, knows that it's about this big.
Yeah.
There's not that many people. There's not that many houses on the island. And Mar-a-Lago was the epicenter for all of those people because it's the biggest house and it was a club and it was public. Like, give me a break. But listen, they know nothing's there. But why do they want to do this? They want to try and embarrass him in any way possible. This is the games the Democratic Party plays over.
Yes.
And the reason America is not buying it is because they cried wolf with Russia. They cried wolf with the dirty dossier. They cried wolf with Kavanaugh's accuser. They cried wolf during the first impeachment and then during the second impeachment and then during all the sham trials and during the mugshots. They cried wolf during all of this. And it all ended up being nonsense, which is why the American people aren't buying this.
Under siege, my family's fight to save our nation. Last word on that. I say 4D chess because I think your dad made them do this. I think that he triggered them by saying, why are we still talking about this? And then they went nuts. And now over the weekend, he said, release everything. Uh-oh. Because it's now, I think that he's always 2 or 3 steps ahead. Is that your history with your dad? He's always just a few steps ahead in whatever the negotiation happens to be?
Yeah, release everything. That's 100% right. But listen, he's always playing 4D chess. I mean, a couple weeks ago, there's a reporter in the Oval Office, Joe. I've never laughed so hard in my life. And they asked him, it was after one of these, shootings, and are you looking into taking, guns away from transgender people, right? And he goes, we're going to look into that. And then on CNBC the next day, you can't do that. Transgender people have a constitutional right to keep and bear arms. And all of a sudden you had the entire left that was effectively defending gun rights in the United States of America. It's always been 4D chess for him. He's been amazing at playing 4D chess. He does it better than anybody. In fact, it's hysterical. Like, as they're arguing for Second Amendment rights, the Democratic Party, it's hysterical to watch, given that that's like the antithesis of everything that they actually believe in. And so my father's always played 4D chess, and he's doing great. I'm incredibly proud of him. And listen, this is Washington, D.C. This is why, Americans, for the most part, detest politicians. And this is why so many Americans absolutely love Donald Trump. And, he's a fighter. The guy will never, ever stop. And he's doing great work for this country. And, they'll put him through hell, and they'll put all of us through hell like they always have, and we'll come out on top like we always do. Under siege, my family's fight to save our nation. Last question, Eric. Thanks for always giving me so much time and so much access. Your friendship means a ton to me and to my family. Trump 2028. Why are you starting trouble? You're wearing hats. You're selling shirts. You got Trump 2028. Does that mean you? Does it mean Don Jr.? Is Dad going to try to get a third term, even though there's a 22nd Amendment? Fill me in on Trump 2028. Honestly, only because it was a great way to trigger the media. In fact, my assistant, who's like the greatest person in the world, the person that's very close to me, came up with a hat, and she threw it to me one day. She's like, "You have to wear it." We can print hats on demand, so she just changed the 4 to the 8, and I put it on. And about 2 seconds later, Elon retweets it, and then everybody in the Conservative Party retweets it. I mean, it had like 80 million views. It was unbelievable. It was like one of the best tweets of the year. And then all of a sudden, the media starts melting down. How dare you? Are you going to subvert democracy? And so, she comes to me about 20 minutes later. She's like, "We need a slogan." And I go, "What's the slogan, Kim?" She goes, "Trump 2028, rewrite the rules." And so we post that. And then she goes, and then the media starts melting down again. Does this mean he's subverting democracy? And it's like, if you just want to, hit the little trigger button, that's exactly what I was doing. And it was a lot of fun. And then he's had so much fun with the hat with Hakeem Jeffries a couple weeks ago. And he's giving Hakeem Jeffries the Trump 2028 hat in the Oval Office. And it just became a funny thing, but people love it. It's like one of the top selling hats. We're selling a ton of them. And it's just, it was a funny little way to kind of trigger these people that are too easily triggered, right? They just ignored it. It wouldn't have gone parabolic, but they can't help themselves. I mean, they literally can't help themselves. And so, it seems like the mainstream media in this country is easier to manipulate than my 6-year-old, child. And so it's, we're just screwing off, having a good time with it. But no, it was a great troll. It was an amazing troll. But is there a future? I mean, can I see an Eric Trump on a ballot somewhere someday? Not in 2028. Listen, who knows? I never thought I would have been #1 New York Times bestselling author by a country mile. I never thought, I would have stood on the stage in, American kind of, presidential politics for, well over a decade of my life. I never
Right.
thought I'd be on 7 seasons of the #1 reality TV show, The
Right.
Apprentice, and I never thought I would have built dozens and dozens and dozens of the greatest properties anywhere on earth. Before the age of 40 years old, and run a $10 billion real estate empire at the age of 33, and kept the animals off of our backs, and gone through this incredible voyage that we have. And I would have never thought any of that, Joe. And it's amazing what the world brings. And so it's amazing the way that kind of God can steer you, and life can steer you. And so listen, never say never to anything. If I would have started saying never, I would have missed out on a lot of opportunities in life. But I can tell you, I don't like politicians for the most part. I think they're all
Right.
full of other than one
Right.
or a couple. I thank God every single day that we have him in the Oval Office, and I thank God every single day that he's protecting American values and the greatest country on earth. Our country was going to hell. Our country was going to hell. Family values were going to hell. And it's because of your voice, and it's because of my voice, and it's because of my father's voice, and it's because of a lot of patriots who would not back down that we won in such decisive fashion. And so we were all in this together. The MAGA movement is going absolutely nowhere. In fact, the MAGA movement is the strongest it's ever been. This is a movement that beat a corrupt government. This is a movement that beat a corrupt DOJ. This is a movement that beat a corrupt media, and a lot of corrupt politicians. You better believe that the movement is strong as hell. Otherwise, we would not be sitting right here where we are. And in fact, we'd be sitting in a far less comfortable spot, because that's
Yeah.
exactly what they wanted for all of us.